podcast. My name's Marina, I'm a dyer and knitwear designer based in the southwest of England, and in this video I'm going to be talking mostly about what I'm wearing, but there are a couple of other things as well. So to start off with, this is Beechmast and the pattern is released today. This project has been in the works for about a year. It is a part of a collaboration with John Arbon Textiles, and I designed the yarn colour and the jumper, and it's just a celebration of autumn loveliness. So I don't really know what order to talk about it in. I'll talk about the yarn first because that came first. So the yarn is Appledore Aran by John Arbon Textiles, and this is a special shade that I've designed. So I've worked with Appledore yarn before. It's a yarn I really love, and when I heard that there was going to be an Aran version coming out, I was really excited. And I really love orange, and I didn't necessarily set out to create an orange, but I'm so excited that I've created a colour that's very me. So I went down to John Arbon Textiles I think it was this time last year, so November, to start working on this colour, and I'm going to show you this weird little bag of tricks here. So the way the John Arbon's colours are created, they have tops in prepared fibre, already dyed in a fairly small range of shades, and then they blend those shades together to create their colourways, which is kind of what gives them that amazing like tweedy richness. And so for this one, Appledore, let's see if I can extract these somewhat neatly. Got bits of knackered leaf here, I'll tell you about that in a second. Oh dear. So this is the range of colours that they blend up all of their standard Appledore colours from. And I find it completely fascinating that they make a range of quite subtle and sophisticated colours out of what seems like sort of 80s ski wear. So they've got the neutrals, which are a very dark grey and a white, and this kind of strange, very slightly pinky brown. It's a very warm brown, but not too yellowy. And then we've got lurid minty green, listerine green, very bright pink, yellow, and a sort of rich turquoise. And the way it works when you're creating a colour with them is you weigh out tiny little amounts of the colour, of the colours that you're putting into the blend, and create a recipe. So you end up doing it as so you do it as percentages of the whole bunch. So like you do proportions to add up to 100. So I've got my numbers here where, I've got magenta 30, yellow 40, and so that would be, I could mix up 3 grams of the magenta, 4 grams of the yellow, and mix up tiny amounts like that on hand cards to get an amount that adds up to 100, and then that creates a recipe that they can use in the mill to make a larger quantity of the yarn, so it's replicable at scale. And so I have quite a few samples in that little bag. These are all the recipes that I tried out. So when I got to the mill, the tiny scales, the little jeweler's scales that you use for measuring out fractions of a gram, which are also the same kind I use for weighing out dye for yarn, those were in use, and so I just cooked up a few different recipes just on paper by imagining, using a bit of colour theory, how these were going to blend together. And then based on those recipes, when I finally got hold of the scales, I got this lot. So I was trying out two different things. I either wanted something very warm and cozy and autumnal, or something soft and tealy green. So these are the two tealy green samples I did. I really like this one. It's a tiny bit too minty. And so had I pursued that one further to make the kind of colour I had in mind, I probably would have included a little bit more brown and a little bit more white to make it paler and also a little bit more muted. But I think that's really pretty. And then that as a sort of tealy green is lovely. And so there are little twisty bits on the end, which is kind of just simulating what it would look like as yarn. But the ones that I primarily went with, so these have the tiniest little swatches on them of literally sort of 5 stitches by 6 rows or something. The ones I did were fairly arbitrary, and I think this one is the one that became this shade. So you can see it's not exactly the same because this is blended by hand and then spun by hand. But this one has quite a lot of yellow in it, whereas the other ones I was going slightly more sort of pinky brown. And so I was going for sort of neutral autumnal. And so I've got the recipes written on each one of these so that I could keep track of which ones they were. But just visually, I'm pretty sure it's, yeah, it is that one. So this colour ended up being mostly the yellow with a fair bit of pink and a decent amount of the brown, and then tiny bits of the grey and the green. So the grey and green are very, very small proportions, but the bulk of the colour is these ones. And so I wanted something warm and autumnal, so these theoretically blended together make red or orange depending on the proportions you bring them into. Then the brown kind of warms it up a bit and makes it slightly less lurid. And then the grey and the green just kind of counteract it and add some depth to it, which means that in the finished yarn you get some really nice little greeny flecks. Like the grey doesn't show up at all, you really can't see the grey in there. But the green just adds some depth that from a distance you don't notice, but close up it's really interesting. And I really like that having quite a lot of that yellow in there. It just kind of makes the yarn glow. And knitted up it glows and it makes me really happy. And then the colour, where have I put my tatty little bit of leaf? I didn't think I'd kept it, but so this colour is called Fallen Leaf, and this is the eponymous leaf. Why have I kept this? This is what happens when you're a mad hoarder. Basically that, I drove down to the mill on a lovely autumn day. The sunlight was low and shining across the trees as I was driving along the 303. And it was just so pretty, and I found that really inspiring in itself. So I did think I wanted to create something inspired by that trip. And then I went into the office at the mill and realised as I was like writing my recipes and things that a little beech leaf had ridden in on my boot and was just sitting under the desk, and I sort of noted it. Well, I need to make sure I take that, chuck it back outside when I'm finished. And then once I'd actually blended up the recipes that I had created, the very first one I made ended up being pretty much exactly the same colour as that leaf. And so that kind of, so I apparently kept the leaf because that struck me. And that is sort of how we arrived at this yarn. And then, this is so many things, I'm making so much mess, and I'm enjoying myself enormously. So the yarn is available now. It's a limited edition. It's also available as top. And I'll talk about what's down there in a minute. So I'll talk about the design now, because that was a really fun process. And I decided to include quite a lot of marinery things. Now, if you've been around a while, you will probably know that I really like a good orange. So I thought I'll lean into that and just include a lot of the details in the design that I really, really enjoy. So things I particularly enjoy, I love a good bit of moss stitch, which we've got in this central panel here. I really enjoy contrasting it with stockinette. So we've got the stockinette down the sides and on the sleeves. And it's the same on the back. So you've got the V shape down there and the neck is just a bit higher. And I knew I had to have cables in the design. That was mandatory. It's an Aran weight yarn. It's a quite nice round yarn. And it doesn't have like seriously crisp stitch definition, but it shows off stitches really nicely. So I knew I wanted to do something with cables even before working on this colour or anything. So my swatches started off with just some stockinette. I always do a stockinette swatch when I'm working with a yarn and trying to decide what to design with it. I don't always swatch quite so assiduously when I'm working on personal projects, but for designing it's absolutely mandatory that I get my gauge absolutely right. Very pleased to be able to use 5mm needles with this, which is heavier than I usually work. I tend to work with a lot of 4-ply and DK weight yarns, which is why things tend to take a long time. So that was my gauge swatch. The stockinette is 18 stitches to 10 centimetres, which is a nice sort of comfortable gauge. And then I started working out what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to do columns of cables, but didn't want to do just like plain vertical ones. I wanted some diagonal interest in there. And so I contemplated like doing a wedge coming up from the hem. So I've done a similar thing on this one where I've got a wedge of moss stitch over the hips that comes up to a point under the arms, and then the rest is stockinette. I really like that kind of detail. And so I didn't know if I wanted, how I wanted to place that, but I knew I wanted some diagonal details. And then once I settled on sort of this V shape that comes from the shoulders down to the hem, and it meets just at the bottom here. I then needed to come up with my cable pattern. I tend not to use stitches from stitch dictionaries. I like to come up with my own, and even though I by working on things myself, I either come up with things that are quite weird and unintuitive, or things that have probably been done before because they come naturally and therefore. So the first one I tried was this one, which I think is quite sort of, it's a little bit kind of Celtic feeling, a bit old world, and I really, really like this cable pattern, but I found that because I was envisaging something fairly modern, I didn't feel like it fitted with the kind of design I was trying to create. So I went with something a little bit more sort of simple, which was this one. And these colours, by the way, are Yeovil Sour and Sheep's Nose. Really lovely colours. And so I tried this one. So it's it uses both 2/1 and 2/2 cables, so they're not just straight diagonal lines. There's a little bit of swoopiness to them, which I really enjoy. And then I thought that I wasn't sure if sort of the gaps between the cables, like the little pearl sections, were a bit too close together, so I tried spacing them out a bit more. And while I really like this cable pattern, I found that it sort of focused a bit more on the bits emerging from the cables below rather than the kind of swoopy arms of the cables. And because the stitches that you cross over in a cable pattern, they get compressed slightly because of the way you're manipulating the stitches. And so the diagonal sections, even though there's the same number of stitches, always look a bit narrower than vertical sections that aren't cabled. And so I was finding that these bits here were looking just a bit blocky for my taste. I actually really like this cable design. I like both of these, and they may make appearances in future designs. So I ended up reverting back to this one. And I love it. So the jumper is worked from the shoulders, top down. I think you start with the back. It's been a while since I actually knitted it. I start with the back, and it doesn't have short rows to shape the shoulders because of the way the cables travel inwards. It naturally creates a bit of a slope over the shoulder, and also a tiny bit of a dip at the sides of the hem, which I really like, and I knew that was going to be the case. Because I manipulate stitches like this quite a bit, I knew how that was going to work out, and so I knew I didn't need short rows on the shoulders, and also that we'd have a little sort of dip towards the sides of the hem. And then just to kind of, because the hem creates a little bit of a curve like that, I didn't want sort of extra strain over the hips at the sides, because if this was continuous, this bit would possibly feel a little bit tight, because it's like these stitches get compressed together a bit and these ones would stretch out a bit. So I've put a little slit there, so the hem is worked flat, just to kind of counteract that, and I think it looks quite fun. And yeah, so we've got a folded collar, so that's folded over double to make it really warm and squishy, and the sleeves are just stockinette. I was considering, what was I going to do? I wasn't going to do cables, but I think I was going to do a section of moss stitch under the arm, maybe. I changed my mind on it anyway, and decided that it was nicer just to keep the sleeve simple. And then, so we've got 2x2 ribbing on the edges, but where I've got the ribbing, something I've started doing, especially where I've got a stitch pattern going into ribbing, I've started doing a tiny bit of garter stitch just to kind of it kind of creates a bit of a line between the stitch patterns, and I do really enjoy sort of flowing from ribbing into a stitch pattern. So having the distribution of knits and purls be continuous down into the ribbing. I've done that on a few designs, but there are cases like this where it just doesn't really work. And so rather than having a slightly awkward transition from stitch pattern to ribbing, I like to do a little bit of garter, like 4 rows, which I've done around the neck here. Like here it doesn't matter because like going from stockinette to ribbing always looks nice, but that's just for cohesion with the hem and neck. And I think with the moss stitch here it looks really nice, and it just kind of creates a nice little transition there. So yeah, top down, joined at the underarms once you've picked up stitches for the front, worked that, and then just worked in the round, and then hem, you do the front and then the back, or the back and then the front, can't really remember, doesn't make much difference. And then you pick up sleeves, pick up stitches for the sleeves and work in the round, top down, and there's a bit of a taper, so just decreases down the sleeves. And I've started ending my decreases a tiny bit early in my patterns because I have quite long arms. I realise that not everyone is going to want to make their sleeves as long as me, and so I always say, you know, work your sleeves to the depth of the cuff less than your desired sleeve length, but if you've already worked all of the decreases and that's taken you longer than your desired sleeve length, that's annoying. So I'm hoping that just that little extra bit of latitude will help people with either slightly shorter arms or people who just want shorter sleeves. But sometimes, you know, you're going to have to recalculate your sleeve decreases if you want shorter sleeves, because that's just the way it goes. We can't have them sort of stop here because then awkwardness. So I think that is what I have to say about the design itself. So it is on my website and it's on Ravelry. And John Arbon have very kindly put together kits with the yarn for the design. And even more kindly, they have sent some lovely things for you. So if you would like to make the jumper, or you know, anything else, we've got 7 skeins of the yarn in a lovely John Arbon Textiles tote bag. So that should be enough to make, I think it's the first 5 sizes, which takes you up to, oh, I can't check, but I will include in the description box the bust circumference that will take you up to. Yeah, so 7 skeins of yarn, and also 700 grams of the top for you spinners. Now I will be tying this bag up. I've untied it just so I can show you. This is what the top looks like. I'm not actually going to take it out because I'll probably create a horrible mess of it and it'll get everywhere. So you can really see there how much sort of pink and yellow there is, and you can also see the streaks of green. And also where the grey blends with the pink and the brown, it looks sort of lavendery purple. And where the grey blends with the green, it looks blue. It's fascinating. Colour theory is so much fun. So I am going to be giving away these 2. So please, if you would like to enter into the giveaway, follow me, subscribe to my channel here on YouTube. John Arbon Textiles also have a channel, please subscribe to them. And in the comments, specify whether you'd like the yarn or the tops, and just say something nice. I'm making it really low stakes. Yeah, just whether you're planning on knitting this jumper, what you'd like to spin with it, what your favourite thing is about the design. just make me smile a bit. It'd be nice. But please do specify whether you want the yarn or tops, and I will take that as you are entering the giveaway, because you are also welcome to comment if you don't want to enter the giveaway for whatever reason. And then after a couple of weeks, so when I'm filming my next video, which won't be a podcast episode, but it'll be a different video, I will then pick a winner and pick 2 winners, a winner for each, and I will announce those, and I'll try and get hold of you, and we can arrange me sending those to you. And it's just so lovely of them. Like, I know quite a few of you who follow me on Instagram have said lovely things both about the yarn and the design already, and I'm just really hoping you're all going to like it. So I will move on to another finished object, which wasn't even a work in progress last time I talked to you. Cone of very dark yarn. This I think I showed you before. This is Rum and Raisin from Raw Wool Company. It is 70% Zwartbliss and 30% Wensleydale, from farms in Cornwall. So the Wensleydale is from Anton of Raw Wool Company's own sheep, and then the Zwartbliss is from a friend of his, Sarah, her sheep, which are Zwartbliss, which are just such like imposing sheep. They're really fun. They're very, very dark but have white stripes on their nose, and they're quite large sheep. And so here is my amusing little swatch. It's going to be really hard to show this to you because it's so dark. And so because it's quite dark, I wanted this design to be more textural rather than detailed, because any details are just unlikely to show up. But I really wanted to show off like it's a really fun yarn. It's got, the Wensleydale has loads of luster, but the Zwartbliss really, really doesn't. It's quite a matte fibre. And so it's got like a little bit of a halo, it's got little lighter bits. Here's my little trapezium of a swatch. So I have made a scarf, and it's just in a bit of broken ribbing, but then at the ends I've used chalk rose to make points, just to add a little bit of interest, because I can't just do a rectangular scarf. And we've got a nice tubular cast on and bind off just to make those edges really neat, and a nice little selvage. So it's a very simple knit, and you could easily make it wider or longer. The pattern is written so that you will be able to modify it for whatever stitch count, and you'll be able to work through as many times as you want to, for the length of scarf you want. You could even go really wide and actually make it into like a fun trapezium shawl thing. So this yarn is a DK weight, and you can see here it's got quite a lot of nice drape to it. It's a woolen spun, I believe, and I would probably wear this as a single wrap like that, but then probably with an end tucked in. Admittedly, it looks like an extension of my hair, which is why I tend to avoid really dark brown on my upper half, but it is a tiny bit more sort of cool and grey than my hair. So you could either wear it like that, or just tied up, or you can do a double wrap and a tuck, which I'm displaying really inelegantly, and I'll probably end up doing all of this again when the pattern is actually released. You can kind of wear it like a cowl. And so this design is part of my West Country collection from this land, which is publishing next month, which is incredibly exciting because I've been working on that one for a very long time, like since, I think, actively working on things towards this project has been since September last year, so a year and a bit. And we're getting there. I'm so excited about it, and I really hope people are going to like it. And also that, like, I know from a few conversations I've had with people either here on YouTube or on Instagram, that like a few of you have been using Fibershed to find local wool producers, because my focus here is on wool from the West Country, so specifically from members of the South West England Fibershed who have provided a bit of funding to make this collection possible. And obviously that's great if you're like nearby here, or if you're in the UK, like it's nice to get local wool here, but I've been hearing from people in sort of North America or Canada that they love the concept, but it doesn't seem super applicable to them, because if you're looking for local yarn, then looking for something across an ocean isn't what you're after. But Fibershed has loads of regional, they're not called chapters, I think they're just called affiliates. And so there are loads in the States and Canada. There are also quite a few in Europe. And there are numerous Fibershed affiliates coming up all over the place. And they are excellent directories of local fibre producers who are not just working locally, but also doing great things environment-wise. So usually if they are fibre growers, then they have to be working, if not organically certified, in an organic way. So the concept is soil to soil. So the idea that the sheep or plants, if you're talking about cotton or flax, for example, the soil grows the fibre. In a very indirect way in some senses. But then once the fibre is produced and turned into yarn and then turned into something else, it can then be buried and will return to the soil without detriment to the planet. So it's that idea that there aren't added plastics and things that will not break down, or things that will pollute. So this collection, which I've talked about a lot, and I will be talking about a lot more in the next episode, is a way of celebrating farmers who are working in that way and producing beautiful yarn. And yeah, so this one will be going out for test knitting quite soon. And there will also be another couple of pieces which are in various states of disarray over there, so I'm not going to show you at the moment because they're just a mess. And so there are going to be 5 pieces in the collection. It's going to be a little sort of capsule collection that is very much intended to be unisex, which is why that is a scarf and not a shawl, because I feel like scarves are much more wearable. My husband will actually be having that one. And I want it to be something that is quite an outdoorsy collection, so things that I would wear for walks in the countryside, things that are practical for wearing and easy and comfortable to wear, regardless of gender presentation. And then, on the subject of naturally coloured wool, I've got a whole big pile of stuff. Tiny little skein of hand spun yarn. So this is a new blend that I have come up with Wing and Woolwork, who I have worked with a lot over the last year and a bit, I think. And this blend I'm really, really excited about. I'm still waiting for my big order, but it's going to be available hopefully next week. And it will be available undyed to start with, and probably mostly because look how glorious it is in its natural state. I wanted to create something really like properly wintry, and like really comforting and like crimpy and bouncy and like a little bit soft as well. So although it looks very rustic, it's actually got a fair bit of softness. And allow me to just remind myself of the breeds I ended up putting in this one. So we've got Black Welsh and Jacob, both of which are very similar in colour, very, very dark. Then we've got Black Shetland, again, similar in colour, but quite nice and soft. And Brown BFL, which gives it a little bit of warmth. And then Light Grey Suffolk, which is the lightest colour in this, that kind of gives it that salt and pepper look. Now actually, if I just compare to this yarn, this is the Rum and Raisin, it's lighter, so I will be able to dye on it, but they will be very, very moody colours. Having said that, forgot to get this one ready for you. This is some green and blue and a tiny bit of brown dyed on it. So you can see it's very, very subtle, but gives loads of depth. So I haven't spun up any of the dyed fibre yet, but I think it'll be really fun. So I'm likely to be dyeing on this base a little less than my other bases, just because it's so lovely on its own. So to compare to my other spinning fibre blends, this is Skewer Blend, which is the first blend I created with Wing and Woolwork, and so it's quite a bit darker than that. And then it is definitely darker than Solace and Feather. So for each one I've tried to come up with something quite different. Like they have quite different qualities. Feather is definitely quite sleek, but also does have a little bit of a halo. Skewer I just wanted to be really, really lovely to spin, and it is a bit rustic, but has some quite long staples in it. Solace is really nice for sort of fuzzy stitch definition, so this is a worsted spin, and it's quite nice as a worsted spin. It's got some lustrous fibres in it. And yeah, so this one is crimpy and like surprisingly soft, and is just so tasty. And then to celebrate, basically having a base for each season. So autumn, Skewer, winter, Tilth. This is going to be called Tilth. Spring, Solace, and Feather, Summer. I've done those in the wrong order in places, but never mind. I'm putting together little sample boxes, because I know a lot of you are keen to start spinning, or have just started spinning, or might just want to see what my blends are like. And so I'm going to be putting together little boxes with one each of all of the blends, so you can try them out. And so these are just 25 gram bundles. I think I'll do 25 grams and then ones with either 50 or 100 grams in each of each blend, but I haven't yet decided So if you are someone who might be interested in that kind of thing, do let me know whether you think 50 or 100 grams would be better, like whether you'd be more likely to go for one or the other. Like, I'd quite like to do the 25-gram ones because it doesn't feel like an obligation to create something from it. Like, you can make a nice little mini skein that you can use for something. You can use it as a highlight. It's good for a bit of sampling, and then if you have some left over, you can just include it when you do a bit more spinning. And I'm also going to be stocking spindles from Wing and Woolwork. So you'll be able to get the little bundles either with or without a spindle, so you can treat it as a learn to spin kit, or you can just use it as a fibre sampler kit to see how you like the blends. Because I found when I started spinning, my first attempt was hilariously bad, and occasionally I whip it out to show and encourage people who have just started spinning, but feel like their spinning is dreadful. I was like, yeah, but it takes practice. It's difficult. It's muscle memory. It seems like it should be easy, but it's one of those things. It's easy to make something, but to make it well is much more difficult and takes some practice. And for me, it only really stuck when I tried a fibre that I actually liked. So I had a little breed selection pack. The first couple of breeds I tried, I really didn't enjoy spinning. And then the third one I tried, which I think was some Wensleydale, which was quite sleek. Although it's a little bit slippery and can drop more frequently if you're using a drop spindle, or can just separate if you're using a wheel. I found that that was so much easier to draft into something that was vaguely even. And so these blends, I've created them to be fun to spin in different ways. And so hopefully by trying them out, they're not they are named breeds within each blend, but it is numerous breeds blended together. And so I think that could be fun to try out. So if you want to hear when those sampler boxes and spindles are available, do sign up to my newsletter, because that's where I will be announcing them, and you'll be able to get 10% off your first order. If you sign up to the newsletter, you then receive a welcome email with a little code, and you can use that on your order. And then the final thing I want to talk about is this here. So this is my Mendip DK yarn, and Sophie Hemmings, the Knit Pearl Girl, has recently published her beautiful Senon sweater, which mostly uses the sheep sunny colourway, and then it has the sky sunny as the contrast colour, and it's just such a lovely design. It seems quite simple, but it's got really thoughtful details. It's got little braids, like how I've included some garter stitch here. It's got little lateral braids around some edges. It's got some really interesting sleeve shaping to give an amazing silhouette, and really pretty, like quite simple colour work. So I think it would be quite beginner friendly for the colour work. And I do have kits on my website in a few colours. So I've gone mostly colours that I think Sophie would like. That's what I was going for. I was chatting to Sophie about it. It's like, I'm just gonna do these ones because they seem like things that you would enjoy. So we've got this colour combination, and then this and Ore on the sunny base, which is a really bright, like tomatoey red. And then we've got a couple of greyish options, so one higher contrast and one lower contrast one. Yeah. And so I shall put a link to those below so that you can have a look at them should you so choose. And yeah, having the kits just means that it's so much easier. You just choose the size you want to make. It's got the measurements included in the description, so you can just pick your size, select it, choose the colours you want, and then you get it. And also it's slightly cheaper than buying the yarn individually. So yeah. I think that is all I have to show you at the moment. So yes, oh no, I will mention, because of the stuff that means people don't see the videos that aren't podcast episodes, I recently done a video on mending your knitwear, specifically using Swiss darning for something that is either invisible or just much less visible than traditional like woven darning. And it's a fairly nice chilled out video, just a bit of chat about mending and how I approach it. And yeah, if you want to learn how to do your darning a little bit better, that sounds really judgy, because woven darning, where you just do up and down stitches and then crisscross stitches, it isn't elastic except on the diagonal. But it means it just puts more strain on the surrounding stitches, and so if it's in a low strain area then it's not that bad. But this mend was on an elbow, which gets a lot of strain because the sleeves I knitted on that jumper for my husband were just too tight, and so the elbow wears through, and so it's a really good mending technique for like high pressure areas. That's phrased weirdly, but you get what I mean. So I hope you've enjoyed today's episode, and I will catch you next time. Bye bye.